What is up, guys? Bo here again, and welcome to another vlog. Today I wanted to talk about, I wanted to kind of give a bit of perspective on a very common problem that people have. And this entry is going to be about relationships, but relationships in terms of just general relations between people, how people relate with each other, right? And that is that I've made an observation, essentially, that there are two different types of people in the world, and I've alluded to this in previous entries as well. I've talked about them, but generally speaking, there are two different types of people, right? There's essentially the people who are more aggressive, and then the people who are more passive, right? And another way of saying this is, people who are more extroverted and people who are more introverted, right? Or type A, type B, there are many different, ways that, people have called, this kind of dichotomy, essentially, of personality types in society, right? So aggressive people, or extroverted people and introverted people, right? Aggressive and passive people. And essentially, that has to do with our upbringing, right? The way that we were brought up, right? And it has to do with the way that we were hurt, right? By, the people, our loved ones and things like that, right? The way that they were tends to have, a bearing on how we develop, right? And it's not always specific. It's not always like, this, the father did this to you. But so there's a bit of complexity to this, but essentially, the people who grew up aggressive, outspoken, stubborn, like they have to get their way. They're very extroverted, they like going out and meeting new people and like bossing people around and being confident and but confident in a very kind of outgoing way, right? And these people also tend to be more clingy, actually, right? They tend to be more, they tend to kind of value their friendships a bit more in a very kind of extroverted way, right? They're more verbal about their relationship with other people, right? And something else I should say as well is these two different personality types tend to attract each other, right? So the aggressive people tend to kind of pair up with the passive people, right? Because if you have someone you have two aggressive people, they're like this all the time, or if you have two passive people, it's like, and so you have that yeah, dance, tango. But yeah, so the aggressive people, they were hurt. We're talking about hurt, right? They were hurt by people who were passive, essentially, right? They attract people who are more passive. They tend to make friends more easily with people who are passive. But it was the passive people who hurt these people, right? And by this I mean that at some point, most likely a parent, right? These people were abandoned, essentially, emotionally abandoned by parents who were standoffish, aloof, absent, emotionally distant, withdrew every time the child wanted attention from the parents. The parents would withdraw and move away from them. And so these people they grew up with this burning desire to get attention from other people. They need validation from other people, right? And initially, the passive people, and this ties into how passive people were brought up as well, but the passive people are really good. I know this because I am a passive person and I do this for certain, right? They're really good at sweet talking the other, the aggressive person to I understand you, I accept you, and the aggressive person's yes, someone who will finally accept me, right? But inevitably, the aggressive person pisses off the passive person. The passive person withdraws the same fucking thing that the parents or whatever whoever did to them, And so the aggressive person finds themselves in this, another way of saying this is a kind of narcissism versus codependency, And I'm not sure if I did an entry about this, but I think I did mention it in one entry. But, the narcissist, or rather, the aggressive person, they have a problem where, like, the people that they attract into their lives are always distant. They always get abandoned by these passive people, who never seem to, who are always, anti-committal, right? And conversely, the people who are passive, right, they were hurt by people who are overly aggressive, right? And of course, they continue to attract the aggressive person, right? The aggressive person steamrolled over the passive person when they were young, right? They invalidated all of their values, all of their beliefs, all of their feelings, in favor of their own, right? So, like, the passive person had to learn to basically tolerate the aggressive person, but, like, the passive person always wanted to get away from the aggressive person, because, like, every time the passive person would be with the aggressive person, like, that's it, bye you, because, like, you're not ever going to be, like, welcome here. It's always going to be the aggressive person that's going to take priority, right? And so, like, the passive person, they grow up with this fear of being controlled. This fear of, like, of like, basically, like, people, like, taking too much from them, because, like, they've lived their entire lives, like, always having stuff taken from them, having their identity taken from them, having their feelings taken away from them, and steamrolled, that, like, they have, like, this pain built around, like, they get fearful, and this, I can confirm this. I'm scared of, like, letting people get too close to me. I have intimacy issues because, like, I'm scared that if someone gets too close to me, they'll take advantage of me. And that's what the passive person is scared of, right? And of course, they have, and like, they're so used to being dominated and, like, being, like, at the mercy of someone's attack. Someone comes into their life and takes over, right? They're, like, they don't know how to make friends. Like, they don't know how to take initiative and, like, make friends with someone, directly. So, like, what happens is, like, and they're really good at, I made a video about this, of course. They make this mask where they're very pleasant, they're very diplomatic, and everyone gets along with them, right? And of course, the aggressive people who, like, who, like, are craving someone who would just, like, fucking accept them, gravitate, like flies to a light, to these people who seem really nice and accepting and non-judgmental, and, like, that's where the pact is formed, right? But of course, the passive person, as soon as someone comes into their life, like, they're already feeling that thing of, like, oh man, like, I'm gonna have to self-sacrifice, aren't I? And inevitably it happens. It becomes a fucking self-fulfilling prophecy, right? And so there's a problem here, obviously, and, like, the reason I wanted to make this entry, essentially, is to kind of give a bit of perspective on this, right? And I wanted you, whoever's watching this, to think about what kind of person you are. This is simple. Of course you'll be able to tell which one you are, either the aggressive one or the passive one. And to think about what this means, to you in your life, and, how you relate to other people, and what kind of image other people have of you, right? And of course, in order to break free from the dysfunction that we build for ourselves, in order to break free from the self-destructive patterns that have led us down this way, the aggressive people who only attract people who are fucking wishy-washy, and they're always distant, and they always disappear at some point, and abandon them, or versus the passive people who, like, only attract, like, who can only ever attract, like, people who take the first step and, like, make friends with them, but then they end up self-sacrificing, right? So, like, they'll never be able to express their true opinions and their true feelings, like, in any relationship, right? How do you break free from this? Well, if you're the first type of person, you need to learn to become independent. you know, because your problem is you don't feel secure without someone else validating you, you know, because of the pain that, you know, those fucking like distant passive people, you know, ignoring you and like never listening and like just like being wishy-washy and like never being there when you need them. That's how you feel, right? You feel as though the people around you are never there when you truly need them, right? Unfortunately, you're going to have to learn to be independent. You know, you're going to have to learn to be secure and safe in yourself when no one's around. Because these people, these passive motherfuckers, are going to keep abandoning you until you can learn to love yourself as you are and to not need those kinds of people. Because once you do that, you'll be able to meet people from a less clingy place, a less, you know, I just wish this, you know, I finally found this person. I wish this person wouldn't turn out to be another passive dickhead like all of the other ones have been, right? And abandon me and like not be there when I need them, right? You'll start to feel safe, you know. For you, it's, you know, for you guys, it's to learn to be independent, to learn to like develop your own hobbies, you know, to learn to like be okay when you're by yourself, you know, and not need the validation of other people. You know, I know it's fucking hard, you know, but this is the way you do it, right? And you like do the things that you love, like pick up hobbies, you know, take walks by yourself or do things by yourself, go to the cinema by yourself, and just learn to be like, I'm here, you know, I'm alone and it's fucking scary as fuck, but like, you know what? This is okay, you know, like, and like, you know, you're never gonna be like, you know, you're never gonna be like, you know, completely rid, you know, I never say never, of course, but like, you know, it's, even if you don't learn to be completely okay with yourself when you're by yourself, that's fine, as long as you can get to a stage where like, you know, people like, you know, like dickheads, like, you know, like flake you, and you're no longer like devastated by it. You're just like, okay, fine, you know, yeah, I'm annoyed by it, but it does hurt, you know, it really does hurt, but like, you know, I know I can at least, I have a degree of independency, you know, I don't need that person necessarily be there, I'll just find someone else, right? And like the whole thing is to like just be safe by yourself, you know, and you can learn to do that, and it's great, right, if you learn to do that, right? The passive person, right, you need to fucking grow some balls. You need to fucking grow some balls and grow some fucking backbone, right? Because like, you need to learn to do things for yourself, you know? You need to learn to assert yourself and to assert your true opinions and to assert your personality and to assert your identity, right? Because your problem is that you're so used to other people like just dominating you in terms of like what, you know, in terms of energy, in terms of what, you know, what's good or whatever it is, you know, you're so used to being dominated by another person and just playing the complete subservient role to that person, you know, you just become this person who's like, this yes person who says yes to everything that other person says, right? And is always pleasant and never like disagrees, you know, you're so used to that like, you know, you're a victim, you're always going to be a victim, a target for these, you know, for these kinds of people coming in and like, you know, because like they come in, they know that you're a person who's going to listen to every single fucking thing that you're going to say, that they're going to say, right, and agree with it, right? And so you need to learn that this is hurting you in the long run. You know, do you actually want to like always like be a like a person pleaser? Like do you want to like always be in relationships where like your interests don't matter, your fucking passions don't matter, it's all about the other person? Like do you ever like, do you just want to, like, of course you don't want to just like, you know, interact with people in this way, you know, you want to express your opinions, you want what you like, what you think, what you feel to be important, right? And so what you're gonna have to do, fucking scary, you know, I talked about this in a previous entry of mine, I'm fucking terrified of asserting myself because of these very reasons, right? But I have no choice, right? You know, if I want to meet people, you know, who are more considerate about what I actually like, you know, who are more in alignment with, you know, my values, you know, and that kind of thing. I need to be brave and show myself. I need to, in moments where like someone else is attempting to steamroll me or like to impose their values on me, be like, no, you know what? You know, I don't want to say this, you know, it scares the fuck out of me to like have to confront you like this, but you know what? I don't like that. Or like, I don't believe in that. Or like, these are my interests, you know? Like, when you're actually showing people stuff and telling people your opinions, to say what you actually mean and to show people what you actually like, right? And, you know, I understand it's fucking terrifying, right? It's fucking terrifying, particularly if you're not used to this kind of thing. You know, I'm a bit better because, like, I've learned to, like, embrace what I like and to, like, to stand by it, you know, no matter what the fuck other people say, right? But when you're just starting out, it's terrifying, you know, because you're used to people, like, not giving a fuck about what you actually like, to the extent where you're just like, what I like doesn't matter. And, you know, I don't want you to be like that. I want you to, like, slowly grow into confidence of what you truly like, you know. And like in those moments when like you feel that feeling, that like really nasty feeling of like, oh man, this part, like, if like, you know, talking this, I know that like from talking to this person that like I'm gonna have to like just like say things I don't want to say, you know, and agree with them, and like it's gonna detract away from time where I actually spend time doing what I actually like, you know. You know, in my experience, like I just like a lot of times, like sometimes like at work, for example, I just want to come home and like play games and like listen to my own music and do what I like, because I'm so drained from having to like cater to what other people like, you know. But like, you know, and you need to learn, like as I have, to say no, you know. If people invite you out to do things that you don't like, you have to learn to say no, you know. Say it in the most, like, in the least rude way possible, you know, like, say it in a way that, you know, softens the blow for yourself, because, you know, obviously, like, you know, you being used to this kind of thing, you're going to hurt, well, like, you're going to, like, be really scared when you say no to people, because what does that mean? Does that mean, like, that person that hate me, they're going to, like, take advantage of me more, they're going to, like, try and dominate me more, you know, and you're, like, scared, right? But, like, no, you have to learn to say no, right? And, of course, both of these strategies I've given you, you know, both the aggressive person and the passive person, right? Yes, there's a side of it that entails courage and willpower, because like sometimes, like for example, for the aggressive person, like forcing yourself to go out to the cinema by yourself, like you're gonna have to force yourself, right? You know, and conversely, if you're the passive person, like forcing yourself in the heat of the moment when someone like who obviously likes you because you're so nice comes up to you and like, hey, do you want to, like, we should hang out sometime? You're like, and like, you know, you're gonna have to like just be like, even if you don't say it explicitly, because I don't do that often, like, to be honest. I'm just like, and then like wait for them to say something. If they don't, just be like, I don't know. And like, you know, I've trained myself to not lie as well. Like I used to, you know, it's tempting to be like, you know, actually I'm busy, or like, you know, but you know that's a fucking lie. You're not busy. You just don't want to hang out with them, essentially. But like, and you're like, and so I've trained myself to be like, I don't know, you know, just keep it vague, but at least you're being honest, because you're not like, oh no, I'm busy, you know, no, you don't want to fall down that trap, because like they'll find loopholes, right? You know, they'll be like, oh, so when are you free? And you're like, oh man, and it's like, no, and it's like, I don't know, and like, trust me, it is terrifying. You know, I've done this recently, actually. You know, there was a person who wanted to hang out with me, and I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't want to. You know, I don't know. I don't know. And then they just like got the hints. You know, some people don't get the hint, but like, you know, but like as long as you're, you know, you're true, and you're like, you stand your ground, and you're like, even if you're vague, as long as you don't say yes, whatever you do, don't fucking say yes. You know, or if you do say yes, you know, think about it, and then later on be like, you know, just come clean and be like, actually, you know, I know I said yes, but I don't know. You know, lie if you have to, you know, but just recognize that, like, you don't take it over the top, right? You know, and yeah, so both these things take courage, but like the other component to this, and I may make an entry about this, but like there's, you know, to everything in life, there's always a push and a pull component, right? There's always a push you need to make, which is like willpower, but there's always a pull, which is something that that you believe in, right? So make it like so that like start to do things in your life that are enjoyable, right? You know, for example, for the passive person, like start to do things such as, you know, making vlog entries or playing games and streaming them, or like making art or whatever it is that is productive that you can like really look forward to, right? And then as that becomes more good, you know, your lifestyle becomes more and more attractive, like it provides more of a pull for you away from like situations where people like ask you to hang out. Because in my experience, like when I was a kid, you know, when I was a teenager, like my home life was kind of shitty because like, you know, well, I don't want to say that, you know, I don't want to say that actually, but like, you know, like there was, I would say that there was nothing in, you know, because I don't want to disrespect my family, honestly, but um, like, you know, there was nothing at home that really pulled me, you know, obviously like there was games, you know, I used to play a lot of games and stuff like that, but like, I wouldn't come home and like be like completely in my zone, but like I do now, because nowadays I'm just alone in my flat, so like I just get to be by myself and it's awesome, right? And do it like make that attractive enough, you know, do more and more of what you love and what makes you inspired and what draws out your creativity more and more, such that like it becomes easier for you to say no, right? And so you have to become strong in one sense, like the push, but then you also want to make it easier for yourself to say no, which is the pull, right? And you know, similarly for the aggressive peeps, you know, you have to force yourself to learn to be independent and not be like so terrified of not having anyone around, you know, being by yourself and being alone and what that means, you know, like people abandoning you, right? You need to learn to that's your push, right? The willpower, like to force yourself to like be comfortable being with yourself. But also like the pull is to find good reasons for doing this, you know. Okay, maybe I can't go out with my friends who are dickheads, you know, just using that as an example, like to watch this film, but like, you know what? I actually really like this film, you know, so like, you know, yeah, that's fine, you know, and like start to do it more and more, and you start to find more and more films that you want to enjoy, you know, okay, actually, I can build a schedule around this, you know, like there's these films actually that are coming out that I really want to watch, you know, and I can use this as an opportunity to train myself to become more comfortable just being by myself, you know, go to the cinema, make like a bi-weekly or even weekly, you know, if you want to really get into it, but like weekly or bi-weekly or even monthly schedule where you just go out by yourself and catch a film that you've been wanting to watch, you know, or like that book that you've been wanting to read, you know, like make more time for reading, or like whatever it is that you really actually enjoy doing, and then just use that as an excuse, or rather as a reason, like to make it less, to make yourself less like clingy around other people, right? And of course I say clingy, but like, and I don't mean in a negative way. I mean like you just don't need people so much anymore, you know, because you can be independent and you can like be secure in yourself. You know, how fucking awesome would that be? You know, you could just, yes, it's nice to have people around. You know, you can chill with like you can go out and meet new people, but like you know that like when it comes down to it, you can just chill by yourself. You know, you're no longer like no longer so like, you know, so bothered by that, you know. Who cares when I'm alone, you know, because I know that at least I have these hobbies now that I love doing, right? So cool. Hopefully, you know, that's my message. So hopefully that's been helpful. I'm just, you know, my wish for this entry, you know, my message, my moral, you could say, is like just like I hope that people with these differing personality types can better understand themselves and to better balance themselves, right? So hopefully this means that, you know, I myself can become someone who is more aggressive, you know, and find more balance in myself. So like ultimately the kind of image I have, and this isn't don't take this like too literally, but like, you know, I like the idea of like everyone kind of coming to terms with their own weakness, you know, like the aggressive people like being too scared of being alone and being abandoned, and the passive people like being too afraid of other people dominating them all the time and to show their true selves, their true opinions and everything like that. I wish that people can like learn to heal their weaknesses and to push forward in the areas of their weaknesses such that they become more balanced within, right? And then from that space, we can all learn to better relate with each other, because like we won't be needy anymore, or we won't be needy and we won't be scared, right? The aggressive people can go out and meet other people without fear that they're going to abandon them at some point. So like they have to like, you know, they don't need to like have to like latch onto them and to be clingy and and overly aggressive on them. You know, they can be chill, right? They can learn to be chill, right? And the passive people aren't afraid of people. Essentially, you know, they aren't fucking chicken shit around people. You know, they can like yeah, I actually want to meet new people. You know, and now I'm confident enough to in my own authenticity, so I'm no longer scared of like having to sacrifice that in front of other people. No, like it just so that they can like me, right? And of course, some people won't like us, but fuck them. So cool. I hope that message has been helpful. I hope it's been insightful, and I hope you guys are having a great day, and I will catch you in the next entry. Peace out, guys. Take it easy.